Hello, wellness community, and welcome. One of the primary objectives of this wellness community and the collaborative community that we are facilitating is to reorganize the way in which we defined mental health, to reduce some of the stigmatization that is surrounded and attached to that terminology, and instead look toward a definition that is more oriented toward mental well-being. And so one of the things to facilitate and create a conversation around as a community is this notion of the spectrum of well-being that we refer to. And no matter where we are individually on that, let's say, spectrum of well-being, with different types of lifestyle intervention that we might look toward for our overall health and wellness, we want to try to facilitate an environment and a community where we're each able to reorient our compass so that our own individual compass of health is now directed toward that lens of cultivating wellness and well-being in our life. And so looking toward a somewhat more positive and positivistic standpoint, orientation, and vocal point where we're each able to look toward that direction and cultivate a direction and intentionality that is best going to suit our own unique presupposition and situatedness within this world and within this community that we're cultivating together. So one of the things that the Wellness Collaborative is attempting to do in relationship to mental health and mental well-being is orienting a community around what we're calling the wellness wheel. The wellness wheel is comprised of different components that are integral within the larger, more holistic sphere of health and wellness, especially as health is related from an etymological perspective to the notion of wholeness. Certain things that we might look toward in starting to observe and become a little bit more aware of things that we are very much oriented toward and are participating in on our own individual level, and maybe some other things that we've maybe neglected somewhat, is to create a more harmonious and integrated outlook that is facilitating a relationship between each of these components of the wellness wheel, such as attention toward our physical health, things like movement, things like exercise, and just our general biology. What is the general makeup and how is that supporting our larger direction toward wellness? Another thing that we might look at is toward our surroundings, our environment. How is our environment, our surroundings participating in facilitating a greater connection toward health and wholeness? Things like personal development, things that are going to nourish us on a much more personal level toward what our objectives are in life, whether that be professional, personal, whatever it might be. Nutrition, an essential component of our health. Sometimes we might refer to this as one of the main foundations for facilitating some of the other things that we might look into. So really considering our nutrition as an integral part of the larger wellness wheel. Our ability to rest and recharge. What is our relationship to stress? What is our relationship to sleep? And how are these things facilitating the, let's say, the tranquility and interrelationship between all of these different components? Because if we're not able to rest and we're not able to recharge through our sleep, it becomes extremely challenging for us to facilitate this reorientation of the compass toward wellness. Another key component is our relationships to our friends, our family, those that are close to us, our colleagues, those whom we work with. How do we facilitate a much more harmonious relationship with those people where we're able to recognize where other people are coming from in this world and really acknowledging that we all have a slightly different perspective on what holds value, and really recognizing that from an empathetic perspective and then being able to adjust and cohabit in a way that's allowing each of us in our own unique way to create a more wholesome and nourishing environment. Our relationships are key to this overall facilitation of the wellness wheel, especially as we look toward what our individual values are, what we hold as important regarding health and wellness, but also how that adapts and participates in the larger community of our wellness and wellness wheel. And then finally, a couple of other things that we might consider are our relationship towards spiritual practices, our emotional well-being, and our psychological well-being. Now, when we look in toward these more psychological aspects of our well-being and then on into some more spiritual components of our well-being, we want to look fundamentally towards what is meaningful and purposeful for us individually as we live in this particular life and as we try to cultivate a way of moving forward through life that is extremely meaningful and purposeful for us. What are the things that we love to do, and how are those things facilitating this relationship and cultivation toward wellness and well-being? And from there, we might suggest that when we look at all of these different things, we note that when there's an integral relationship between physical, nutrition, rest, our relationships, our environment, we're automatically creating a groundwork that's going to directly benefit our psychological well-being, and from there our mental well-being and our mental health. Now, obviously there are going to be direct things, more interventional things that we can do specifically for more crisis intervention relative to our mental health. But we might also want to consider some of these aspects as equally important as we look towards this larger spectrum of things that we might consider as we all try to, wherever we might be located on that spectrum, orienting that compass toward a space of what's going to directly imply and influence our relationship to health and wellness. That's an introduction to the wellness wheel and cultivating a much more holistic, mindful awareness model. We're going to look into this in greater detail relative to each of these different components. But we might start by just asking ourselves the question as to what things do we already consider as very important for us as we reorient that compass of wellness, and what things have we perhaps neglected or not even considered that might be equally as important as we try to refacilitate this definition toward health as wholeness, and again, moving our direction toward a much more wellness-oriented model of mental health.